All right, here we go. Deck of cards. So what I've done here is I have just dropped in the instructions into our code file, so that way we don't have to keep kind of going back and forth. And I think what we're going to do is once we get some code in here, we're just going to run it with NodeMon so that we can, constantly see our updates to the file. So here are the instructions. The first thing we're going to be doing is creating the card class, and then we're also going to create a deck class as well. And then I think, yeah, thirdly, we're actually going to create a player class. So that'll be fun. So let's start up here. The first thing we're going to do is the card class itself, and they're telling us what functionality it has. So let's just come in here and write class card. There we go. And what do we usually need when we create a new class in JavaScript? Constructor. Yeah, exactly. So let's just set that aside. We're just going to have this constructor here. We don't really know what it's going to have yet because we haven't really looked at the instructions. If I look down here, each card should have a suit, hearts, clubs, diamonds, and spade. So that's probably something we're going to set in the constructor, and we'll just take it in. So our first parameter is going to be the suit, and then let's just say this.suit equals the suit that we took in. What else do we need? We need to have a string value for the card value. I'm going to take a little bit of a shortcut on this, and I hope you guys aren't mad at me. We're just going to say the number is 0 to 13. Does that work with you guys? Yeah. All right, cool. So we'll just say that the second parameter that we're taking in here is a value, and then we'll do the same thing. We'll just say this dot value equals the value that we took in. Each card should have a numerical value. Oh, 1 through 13. Actually, they said that here. Excellent. So there seems to be a little bit of a discrepancy in the instructions here. So we got, ace, king, queen, and jack, but yet we're saying each card should have a numerical value. So let's just stick with the numerical value. Each card should have a show method, so let's create that. Show. And we don't need to take anything in. We're just simply console logging the information about the cards. So let's do console.log, and we'll say something like this, suit, and then just tack onto that the suit, and then we'll add a little semicolon here and say value, tack on the value itself. Oops. Okay. So now that we've got a little bit of code in here, let's create a card and make sure that everything's working as expected. Just come down here. We'll say const card equals new card, and we'll say the suit is hearts, and the number is 5, for instance. Then let's just do the show method to make sure that's all good. So we go card.show. And I'll come in here in my terminal, and we'll run this with NodeMon so that we'll always see what the latest output is. Deck. Oops. Okay, so we're good so far. We got the show method working. We're seeing the suit and the value. Let's go back to get out of that for a second. Okay, so we've got that. Now the next thing that we need is the deck class itself. So the card class is all squared away. I'll comment out this here because we're done with that for now. So we've got class. Let me put it underneath here. Okay, so class deck. And again, let's just kind of we'll look over the specifications and just see what we got to do. Deck has to contain 52 standard cards. the deck should be able to shuffle, and the deck should be able to reset. So when we reset, I'm assuming that we're just going to put all the cards back in order. Is that how you guys were seeing that? Okay. And then we also need to be able to deal a random card. So what that's going to do is we are going to return the card and actually take it out of the deck itself. So if we start with 52 cards and we deal a card, we should be left with 51 cards, and that method is going to return the card itself that we have dealt. So in our constructor, what do you guys think we might want to do initially? Any ideas there? Oh yeah, certainly. Which part were you trying to see? Up in the actual card class? Is that what you're looking for? Was there anything in here that doesn't make sense, or that looks wrong? Okay. Oh, you're putting in the exact same code that I have? This right? Yeah, it's okay if you want, if you feel like it's better just to watch and then you want to kind of code along with it later on too, that's fine. You are recording this, right? Yes, I am indeed. So so down here in the deck class, what we can do, since we're going to have this reset method, which is essentially going to create all these cards in order for us, we can go ahead and call that from within our constructor to construct the deck like that. So that way we don't really need to, otherwise we would have to construct the deck in the constructor, and then we'd sort of have to do the same thing in our reset method. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. The other thing I might do in here is I might, let's see. Oops. Let's just say what our suits are. And so the ones that we need are hearts, diamonds, spades, oops, and clubs. Okay, and the reason that I'm doing this, actually we don't necessarily have to do it here because I think this is the only place that we're gonna need to use it is going to be in the reset method. So instead of setting that as a property on the instance, let's just use it inside of our reset method. All right, so let's create this reset method. And what we want to do is we want to create all the cards that that should go in the deck. So the first thing that we can do is we can say this.cards equals an empty array. Did anyone try to do this as a linked list? Was that one of the optional things on it? No, it wasn't. Okay. Because I remember, I think in maybe one or two of the other stacks, that's kind of like a stretch thing that you can do if you decide, okay, doing it as an array is too easy. Try it as a linked list. But anyway, so what we want to do is we want to have these suits up here, and I'll just grab this. We'll take it out of the constructor. Oops. Put them up here. And we'll say const suits. So this is not going to change, and that's why I'm using const. We'll never alter what the suits are that we're resetting with. And then what we're going to do is we're simply going to iterate through, first we're going to iterate through the suits, and then we're going to have kind of an inner loop within that where we iterate through the numbers themselves. And then that way, each time we create a new card, we're just going to push it into our deck. So let's do that. So we'll go for let I equals, whoops, I equals 0. And then we know that we only have 4 suits, so I'm not even going to bother with the whole suits.length. We'll just say while I is less than 4, and we'll increment I. And then inside that, what we're going to do is we're going to run the inner loop to actually get the value of the card. So we'll do a for let j, and then j is going to be less than 13 because we have 13 cards for each suit. Increment that. And then, so inside here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push into this .cards, like that. And we're going to push in a new card. So there are a couple ways you could do it. You could obviously create its own variable here. You could say const card equals new card, and then we'll pass in suits at I, because that's going to be the suit that we want, and then the value is just going to be j itself, because we're not doing jack, queen, king, and ace. We're just skipping those for now. So if we create that card there, then we can just push it right into our deck. So let's do that. Any questions about this so far? Does that all look good to you guys? Thumbs? Yeah? Solid. Yeah, actually you're right. I think they did say 1 to 13. Good point. Okay, let's change that real quick. So here in J, 1, and we'll say less than or equal to. Good catch. So the way that we had it before, it would have been 0 to 12. And sometimes it's these little specifications that get glossed over. So let's call this inside of our constructor, and that way we're kind of reusing one method for a couple different things. So let's say this dot reset, and that doesn't take in any arguments there. And then let's just create a deck down here. Deck equals new deck, and we don't have to pass it in anything. And then let's just log out what, we'll just say deck.cards and see what we have in our cards thus far. All right, deck.cards, okay. Something crashed in here, or at least it seems to be. Clean exit. Oh, never mind. I think the clean exit is just because we don't have the difference between this type of file and the normal sort of Express stuff that we're working on is that this file just simply goes through the code and that's it. There's nothing, it's not like it's listening for requests on a port like we're doing with Express or Node. So if you see in here, we've got all of these cards as we wanted. So for all of our hearts, we got 1 through 13, diamonds 1 through 13, spades 1 through 13, clubs 1 through 13. So we're good there. Get out of there real quick. Okay, so we've covered this part. We've got our 52 standard cards. The next thing that we need to be able to do is to shuffle. And actually, we've covered reset as well. I'm just going to put some dones in here. So we did that. All right. We want to be able to shuffle these cards. How do you guys want to do that? Any thoughts on that? Or any special ways that you guys came up with to randomize? Temp swap? That sounds solid. So what was your method for swapping?
For loop through your deck.
Okay.
Through your, what are you calling your array? Cards?
Oh, I'm just going at cards, yeah. So it's sort of like deck.cards.
So the for loop through your deck or the cards, the length of it, your first index, second index, and 10.
Okay.
Your index, the first index equal to math.floor, math.random times 52. Second index, same thing.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I think that we're going to do something quite similar to that. It might be exactly the same, but it sounds like there's potentially a small difference. So let's just create this shuffle method up here. Shuffle. Okay. So the idea that I'm going to use for our shuffle is basically we're gonna just run the same sort of functionality a whole bunch of times. And what it's going to do is it's just going to pick two random indexes in our cards array and then just switch them. So for obvious reasons, the more times that we do it, we would expect things to get more and more random. If we only do it, if we were to do it a couple times or whatever, the deck wouldn't be very well shuffled. So let's just kind of come up with a number here. Let's say we're going to do this, I don't know, 200 times. Does that sound about right? So we'll say, well, I is less than 200, increment I. Now what we need to do is we have to get these two indexes, and so what we're going to do, as you were saying, is we're going to take a math.random and multiply that by 52, and then we're going to floor that so that we make sure that we get an integer every time. So let's just say const index 1 equals math.floor math.random times 52, and then I'm just going to copy that down for index 2. Okay, and then what we want to do is since we're doing kind of the temp swap like you were talking about, is we want to save the value of one of those cards so that when we copy over it, we still have the card itself so that we can switch that back to the other position. Okay, so we'll say card equals this dot cards at index 1. And then what we want to do is we want to we want to say this dot cards at index 1 equals this dot cards at index 2. So that will take, and I'm just assuming here, let's say index 2 is actually further down the line and index 1 is to the left of it. That's not necessarily true, but just for the sake of argument. So if we've got index 1 is way down here, index 2 is there, and I just want to switch them. So I'm going to take index 2 and simply drop it in there. And then I'm going to take that card that I have saved and put it into there. So once we've done that, we could do the same thing with this one. We'll say this dot cards at index 2 equals the card that I already saved. Okay, so let's run this, and we already have our deck, and I'll just slip in here after we've created the new deck. Let's do a deck.shuffle, and then we already had that console log there, so we should see what the cards are. Okay, so starting from the beginning here, we've got spades, an 8 of spades, a 5 of hearts, a 3 of spades, 10 of hearts, some clubs. I don't know, does that seem sufficiently shuffled, or should we do more? Good enough. I'll just drop it or increase it to 300. And then Now we're in pretty good shape. So we got a 1 of hearts, 4 of clubs, 9 of spades, 3 of clubs, so on. Wow, a lot of clubs in a row here, though. Anyway, so it's not really giving us like a tremendously useful shuffle, but it's good enough for a college try. Yeah. So, so let's keep moving. We've got the shuffle method. Let's see what else we need to implement here. We'll say this is done. Deck should be able to remove a random card. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to pick a random card that's left in the deck, pull it out of the deck, and then return it with this method. So our deck.deal method we'll put down here. This doesn't need to take any arguments. And let's find a random index in the deck. The thing that we have to be careful about here is that at this point we don't know that the deck still has 52 cards in it, because we could have already dealt some cards out. So instead of just doing math.random against 52, say that again. Well, it's saying in the instructions here that we need to pull a random card, which is not typically how cards would work, but
after we shuffle it, it's gonna be random card. So if you take it out from the last one, it's gonna be a random.
true. Yeah, but and I agree with what you're saying, but what if we hadn't yet shuffled the deck?
But the game rules, you have to shuffle.
No, yeah, normally you would do that. So I don't know. Do you guys want me to just pop it off, or would you rather? It's totally up to you. See another way. Okay, yeah, that's fine. So let's just choose. We'll choose an index by saying the same sort of thing that we did before. Math.floor, math.random. And instead of multiplying by 52, let's just multiply by the number of cards that are left in the deck. And then what we need to do is we're just going to, the first thing we need to do is we need to extract that card from the deck. And then the second thing that we need to do is to actually return it from the function. So in order to extract it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say cards equals this.cards. We'll slice from the beginning up to this random index, and then I'm going to concatenate everything that appears past that random index. So what the concat function does is it allows us to push in an entire array into the new array that we're creating. It's a lot like the push function that you guys have used before. The difference is with the push function, you're only pushing in a single item at a time. So if I want to shove in this entire array, I could do this.cards.slice, and then we're going to do it from index +1 because we want to skip the one that we're taking out, and then we want to go all the way to the end. So the second parameter of the slice function again is optional, so if I leave that alone, it just means it's going to take everything all the way to the end. In fact, I don't necessarily even need to set this as a temporary variable. I could just do this.cards equals that thing. Does this bother you guys, or does this look okay? I know it's kind of a lot of stuff on one line there. Sure.
So where it says this.cards.slice and then 0 up to the index,
Mm-hmm.
we're taking out from 0 to that index.
No,
Yes, but it's exclusive of that index. So we're not actually, when we slice this, that the item at that index is not going to be included. It's excluded. So for instance, if I had a little small array, say with 3 different things in it, and I did,
Oh, no, I see.
you know, if I sliced like from 0 to 2, it wouldn't actually give me, it wouldn't include the item that was at index 2. Okay. So what this is doing is it's sort of taking the left half and then attaching it to the right half, and I'm left with that one card that I'm trying to give back.
Of what you're doing, but
Right. Okay. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's just return the card out. That was, whoops, actually I should save it first, because otherwise I'm going to lose a reference to it. So we'll say card equals this dot cards at that index. And now that we've removed it from our cards, we can just return it out. All right. So let's come down here. We console log the deck.cards. Now let's say, we'll say delt card, and then deck.deal, like that, and then console.log the delt card. Get down here. I think I need to make it more clear what we're actually, hold on a second. Let me just comment that out. Undefined. So let's see what is happening here. So card is undefined. Whoops. Which probably means, whoops. There's the problem, yeah. I was like, wait a minute. We're getting like an index that is out of bounds or something. So let's try that. That was kind of a obvious slip up. Okay, so there we go. So we're getting a 10 of spades. Let's come back in here. Take that out. Cool. So yeah, so each time the program runs, you know, in theory we should be getting a different card back, right? Even though we're doing the same exact thing, because we're sort of doing a randomized shuffle, we're getting something different. All right. So I think we're pretty good on this. Let me just make sure we got everything. So deal is done. Now the other thing that we need to be able to do is create a player class. So let's do that down here. Player. Just come underneath here. Okay, so class player. And we've got the player should have a name and the player should have a hand. All right. So let's do a constructor again. And let's take in that player's name so that we can assign it to him. So we'll say this.name equals name. And then he's going to have an empty hand initially because he hasn't yet gotten any cards. So we'll just say this.hand equals this empty array. And then we have a couple different methods here. So the first one is that we should be able to take a card using the deck.deal method. And then the second thing is we should be able to discard a card. So let's work out the take method. Take. What do you think we might want to take in as an argument for this? Because we're trying to use deck.deal, the deck.deal method. What do you think we would need to take in order to be able to run the take method. A deck, yeah, I heard deck over there, and that's what we want, right? We need to have a deck to actually be able to take from the deck. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's just pass in a deck right in here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to push into this player's hand. So we'll just say this dot hand dot push. And we're going to go deck.deal because dealing is going to pass us back a card. All right. And then down here, let's just create a player. So const player equals new player. Name is me. Okay. And then after we create the player, let's do the take method. We already have this deck up here, and let's pass that in. So we'll say player.take, and then we'll pass in deck. And then after that, I'm just going to log the player's hand. We'll see what's in there so far. Keep saying handle. Hand is not defined. Whoops. Player.take, oh yeah, of course. Sorry about that. All right. Okay, so currently his hand consists of a 13 of clubs, and then we'll do this one more time just to kind of build his hand up. Let's say he's playing blackjack, so he's just going to start out with a couple cards. So we'll do that one more time. Player.take. And then I'm going to log, let's see, I'm going to log a couple things. So we'll just say this is the hand, and then we'll also log the deck just to see where that is. So we'll say deck, number of cards, and we'll say deck.cards.length. Okay, so there we go. So inside of his hand, he now has two cards. He's got a 9 of diamonds, a 1 of hearts, and the deck number of cards went down to 49. Does that sound right? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Which one? Oh yeah, because we took something out of it, no? Because we dealt from it. Yeah, that's why. So we dealt. So if I take this out, oops. There we go. Good. So we got 50 cards. Key took 2 of them, and we're all set on that. So the only other thing we need to do is just be able to discard. If we discard, does that go to the bottom of the deck, or does it just, is it like removed from the game entirely? Does it removed entirely? Okay. Okay, so they should be able to discard a card. I'm not sure if we're doing this by index or what. I guess we're just going to take in a card, right? The specification for this, I'm not entirely sure how we want to. Okay, so discard. So what we could do if we took in a card is we could filter out his hand so that it only contains things that are not that card. That would be one way of handling this. So let's just say this dot hand equals this dot hand, and then we'll filter it. You guys probably haven't seen filter yet, but what filter does is it allows us to pass some kind of callback function that will determine whether or not that item is going to be included in our ultimate array here. So if I want to filter that, and each one of these is a card, so we'll just say a function that takes in a single card. And what we want to include the single card, so if we return true from our filter function, that means it will include the item. If we return false, then it will exclude the item. So let's just return whether the single card that we're looking at is not equal to the card that we're specifying here. So assuming that we're taking in a card for the discard method, that's how we would handle it, because we're just checking to see, is this card exactly the same as the one that I took in at the when I ran this method? If they are exactly the same, then I'm going to exclude that from my my hand from that point forward. So he's got some kind of a deck, and let's just say we want to discard. Well, he's got 2 cards already. Let's do this like a couple more times. Okay, so now he should have 4 cards in his hand. Let's come down here and we'll go player.discard, and we have to do his card or his hand. We'll say at index of 2. So we'll take out the 3rd card that's in his hand currently. And then we'll log after that what the length of his hand is. So player.hand.length. Okay, so does that make sense to you guys? We filtered out the card at index 2, leaving him with 3 cards, because I changed it so that he was actually taking 4. So his hand had 4 cards in it. He got rid of one of them, and now he's got 3 left.
So,
Yes.
instructions say when you create a player, he automatically has 5 cards.
Oh,
Up to
did it?
5 cards? I'm not sure.
Did it say that? Let me
Is that
see.
what it says? No?
Yeah, I don't see anything about 5. Well, I'll go back to the assignment, but I just copied it straight from there. Yeah. Marco bonus. Did you have a question about like how you would do that in that case?
Like, can you create the
We create the player.
and then does that make you just like automatically cards in the deck?
Yeah, if that was how if that's how it works, every time we create a player, he's going to have a hand that has 5 cards in it. Yeah, we could just do, we could deal from the deck 5 times and give him a hand that has 5 cards in it. Sure.
I saw that. Never mind.
I know it is. Sometimes you're sure that you've seen something, but it's just not always there. Any other questions?
Usually the filter method.
Oh yeah, certainly. So filter is going to run this function against everything that's in that array. So just visualize it like we've got this array with 4 cards in it. It's going to go one by one, and then take it out of there. The other thing that we could do actually that might even make more sense is since we already know, oh actually no, we don't know that, sorry. Because if we're taking in the card, we don't necessarily know what index it's at, right? And that's why we were doing a filter. But if we did know the index, of course, we could kind of do the same thing like we were doing with the hand, where we could say, you know, his hand is now this left half, and then tack on the right half, just excluding that card that we were discarding.
So we're passing in cards.
An instance of a card, yeah.
Is that randomly generated?
How is it seeing card?
Yeah.
This is where you put your
Oh,
cards.
do you guys want to see what the card actually is? Like, do you want?
Where is it getting it?
Yeah. What?
So when I called the method here, I gave it player.hand at index of 2, so that's taking the card that's at index of 2 in his hand.
Looking at the value.
It's not really the value, it's the actual card itself. So the card has a value. Yeah, of course. So if we run this method, we could take a look at we'll just say, this is the card. Right there. So this is the card. It's actually, you'll see it has, so it's actually a card type. Other questions? Pretty fun assignment, right? Oh, there's.
Deal 10 times. I want to see if it says something.
Do what 10 times?
Deal a card 10 times.
Deal a card 10 times. Okay. Is there any particular spot where you want me to do it?
Now just generate 10 cards.
Okay, so we'll go deck.deal
Oh, I mean take.
take.
Yeah, take.
You mean player.take.
Yeah, player dot take.
Okay, player.take deck 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Is that 10? Yeah, that's 10 times.
You wanted to player dot.
Yes, you're right. Whoops. Wrong thing, sorry. Player.take deck soft. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. All right.
Display the hand.
Sure. Okay, so let me just comment some of this out. Oops. So console.log player.hand. So yeah, his hand now should be 13 cards, right? Because we gave him 4 initially, then he discarded one of them. Then we did 10 more times, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, yeah. So you got 13 cards now. Make sense? Okay. All right, that's it, guys. Deck of cards.